Welcome back to the Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you are currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps along your journey. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now, let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Now let's take you into the room at a previous Thermostat Cultures live event with my interview with the eclectic, the dynamic, the fun, Jeni Britton Bauer, friend and founder of Jeni's Ice Creams.
Well, culture is dynamic, so it's changing moment by moment every single day by the way we think, act, and interact, right? And so how we think about this and how we think about our role in that change is one of the things that helps anything around us change. From our own thinking to our own individual actions, but then absolutely to every single interaction that we have with the people around us, begins to anchor what is it that's most important to us. And it begins to anchor in positive ways or negative ways that this is the temperature that we begin to set. And so it's awesome that we're going to now carry the conversation forward, and I'm very excited to bring Miss Jeni Britton Bauer up here in just a second. So Jeni is a artist, I think, first and foremost. Fast Company names you one of the most creative people in business. From starting a ice cream stand of locally sourced, fresh ingredients in the North Market in Columbus, Ohio, to then growing to 9 cities, I think now, right? Is that right? And in many different stores, amazing culture that is still being created and building, and recognized, I think, as a brand and a growing brand that's doing things in really interesting and thoughtful ways. And so I'm excited for us to learn from her experience, but then also to ask questions. I think she's got questions to ask of the group. We're going to have continue another great conversation with Jeni Britton Bauer.
I feel like it's human. I'm putting that on my business card. Human being. That's the best. Yeah, we hear all those things. I don't know. I think so. Oh, there we go.
There you
go. You hear that all, and I always feel too that we've had such beautiful press over the years and validations and so on, and I don't know where any of those are. Like, we always feel like it's wonderful to be to receive that kind of praise, and it is validating for our team, but they all represent yesterday.
Yeah.
And not necessarily the action we do today.
Yep.
So it's funny. I agree, and I feel like sometimes it's hard to hear. Like, I don't even know what that means.
I say that to teams and organizations all the time. That so many people get trapped looking in the rearview mirror, right? Of what did we do yesterday, what was created yesterday, but yet to shift our eyes from the rearview mirror to the windshield, and where is it that we're trying to go tomorrow, and are we committed to whatever it is? Not just that we had, 17 great years of marriage or 17 great years of a team or 17 great years of a company, but what is it that we're committed and excited about doing next, right? Mm-hmm. So what for you just personally, what nowadays, like what brings you joy? What makes Jeni Britton Bauer happy in the world? Because you got great hair, you're happy, right? What brings you joy?
I get joy of doing things and following my curiosity. I get joy in reading with my kids every night and learning something new. I find joy every day when I go to work and get to work with amazing people. I mean, I feel like people say that, but I don't know. I mean, I feel really deeply joyful when I go to work.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of the conversations we were just having the other day that you were saying that you love the fact that you wake up and you have things that you want to go do and things that you want to be a part of. That's it's not a chore. It's what it is that you're choosing.
Yeah,
to do.
My grandmother would be like, "No, don't. You got to take care of yourself. Don't work, Jeni. You're working too hard." And because she sees so much work. But it's hard to explain that it's such a wonderful thing to do, you know?
Yeah.
And that even when I'm not at work, you know, there's a light bulb on all the time.
Right.
That's there anyway, you know? And I just take my kids with me right there. I mean, we're drawing or something at the table, and we're thinking, you know, all of it impacts my work, I feel like.
So we've been talking about this term, authentic leadership, and what does it mean for what does it mean for you to be an authentic leader? And I guess another way I'd ask it is, what is it that you want to contribute? What do you want people to see in you or to know about you? What's authentic for you?
I don't know what's not authentic. I mean, I started my company. We're almost 15 years old this month. 15 years ago, working, you know, making ice cream and serving it over the counter, and listening to feedback and working from that beautiful place, the North Market, and from all of those beautiful people who came to the market to experience ice cream, and then morphing over time into the company and learning who we wanted to become based on that experience, you know, and then just taking one step forward every day, doing that with people who were in our company, but also people we were serving over the counter, and those are all a part of that beautiful community that we created. And I learned so many things from that foundation at the market, you know, about community and about how a rising tide lifts all ships, and how and seasonality of ingredients and all of that stuff, and how to make ice cream, of course. And I feel like that's just where, still to me, it all comes from.
Right.
But you know, I'm an emotional thinker. Like, I don't know if you can. I mean, it is a way of thinking. I mean, I feel through. And so even, I struggle sometimes to put words around it. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be able to tell you what an authentic leader is. I don't even use the word leader very often. I mean, if I'm being honest, in 22 years of doing ice cream, maybe this year is the first year I've used that word.
That's right. Well, you've been on your own journey, and you've been, I think, challenged to be this is my language, but I'd say that you yourself have been stepping back. You're part of the Henry Crown Fellows, which is a really wonderful, great honor that to be selected to be a part of this, but a program for you to be thinking about your own leadership and your own path. And as we've talked also before, that, you know, leadership is certainly by title, and there are many people in the world that have a title of leadership, but we also know that there are many people in the world that have a title of leadership that do not lead. And so leadership really is also about the fact that people are always watching what you're doing. And so they're taking their cues from you. But so you say something about your own journey that you're on right now of maybe discovering what does that even mean to you.
What does leadership and just that sort of... I mean, lately I've been referring to myself as the host, you know? Like, I'm Jeni of Jeni's Ice Creams. I have, I'm still creating all the recipes, and we do all of our art and design on our team. Like, everything that we do that's an experience, everything you experience in our shops comes from the team that I work on every single day, whether it's the color of the walls or the, whatever it is, and that's really important to me. But I've been thinking about it lately, referring to it as the host, because host is such a great word. I mean, it means many things. I mean, you think about a host of a play, or like the narrator, or the host of a party, who's helping you know where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do, making people feel comfortable. But hosting a show, telling somebody, information, communicating information, writing people into the story, bringing people into the story, hosting people. So I kind of almost feel like, from my perspective, lately I've been thinking about Jeni as the kind of the host of this whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
John is our CEO, work very closely together, and we have such an amazing relationship. But we think of ourselves as like a two-headed monster. And I think John comes from a I'm not sure if I would call John a super traditional person, but maybe more than me. And he comes from a place of more traditional leadership training, which is awesome because I get to learn from that every day.
Right.
But that's definitely not where I come from.
Yeah.
I have never worked for anybody else. I never had that training. And so everything that I know, I either learn from sci-fi fantasy fiction, which is where I get all my leadership stuff.
Somebody write that down.
Or John Lowe and some of our team members, No, it's true. I mean, we can go deep on that anytime. Well, it is true, though, the hero's quest. I mean, when you're building a company is community.
Right.
And when you're building a community, you have to have this sort of shared vision of what's possible. And it's usually what other people might think of as impossible. And so that's totally the Frodo quest, the hero quest. And then there's so much failure that goes into it, which we see in all sci-fi and fantasy fiction, right?
Yeah.
And all of those lessons of failure gets you there.
Yeah.
But there's so many wonderful lessons of just, sci-fi.
We're going to share a documentary. We got Finding Joe. She's got to see Finding Joe. So about the hero's journey and everything.
Okay,
so
yeah.
remind me of that later.
Okay.
But so we've also been talking about that language drives behavior.
Yeah.
And you, I know you just said that you don't think about that as much, that you go from the heart, but yet I think it's interesting that you refer to it as that you have a company and not a business.
Yeah, and I don't want you to think that I don't think about, because I do. I think about translating this stuff almost constantly.
Yeah.
How do we translate what this thing is, what we're doing? And you do this. Yeah. Your whole book is that or whatever. Yeah. And I also think that there's this feeling your way or whatever, and you're always trying to translate what that is and how to get people. But yeah, company.
So why the distinction? Why is that important to you that you call it a company and not a business?
Well, company is a great word. I love the word company. It means you're not alone. It means that you're together on this, company, like a ballet company, working together on this quest. Or with this vision in mind or in our scopes. So company. And our company is a community. All companies are a community. But what are your values and what is that community? And I think of our community a lot like a garden. And I'm not a gardener, unfortunately, but I grew up with grandparents who gardened, and knowing how you sort of tend your garden, it grows as lush and green, and parts of it you may be okay with letting go a little bit because you got to put all the energy over here, but it's this constant working to keep it lush. And beautiful.
Yeah.
Someday I'll be an actual gardener.
The other thing I thought was fascinating talking to you is this idea that you're not just out to be the best, which I think in a room full of people that are high achieving folks, that all, again, wonderful people here that have all been achieving and doing wonderful things, it's an interesting, oftentimes in the culture that we live in, big picture, it's a drive to be the best at something. And yet, I think it's fascinating the way that you talk about that the goal is not to be the best and how you articulate that. Explain a little bit what you mean by that.
The reason we don't want to be the best is because it's actually too easy, right? It's too easy to be the best because we can look at any other ice cream company out there and do one thing better and call ourselves the best. And that's, to me, that's too easy. That's not the best.
Yeah.
Better is active. It's, your everyday. It's patience. It's the long game. It's understanding that we can't be everything. Now, don't get me wrong. We want to make the best ice cream in the history of mankind. But that's not possible today. And or maybe it is. I mean, we've done it a couple of times. I know that for sure. But it is. It's actively looking into what we're doing and getting better every day. And we say that we want to make better ice creams every day. Those two things that we do every day in our company, make better ice creams, bring people together, those two things. And how we do it, behind the counter, over the counter, all of it is around that. But we can unpack that for miles. Making better ice creams every day is everything that we do every day we're going to get better at. We're going to get an idea of how we're going to make that better and take that step every day. And then, point A to point B is not a straight line. It's like swerving. You're swerving constantly up and down and in and out and whatever, and eventually you get there. But you do that by trying to get better every day, because you're not going to, there's no way to just say, you can, I could have made better ice cream than anyone else, or the best ice cream, build a better mousetrap by changing one little thing. And that wasn't what we wanted to do. Truly, we wanted to make the best one that ever existed, and that's by every day inching forward.
Yeah. Hey, Christy. Yeah, Christy, can we go handheld if you got that out there somewhere? Maybe we'll just turn that one off.
All right.
Better?
Yeah, better, I think, right?
Yeah, so what I think is fascinating about that, though, is that, again, it's not just about, so if what it meant to be the best ice cream in the world was to add 2 more strawberries, and then it's better because it has 2 more strawberries in whatever the last ice cream had, that's not the goal.
Business model or whatever, yeah.
And now that you've somehow achieved, okay, now we're the best, well, so is the next place, is the goal just to add 3 strawberries, right? And you're in this, but yet the way that you talk about not just the ice cream, but in the process that you're in is saying, how can we be even better tomorrow than we were yesterday?
Yeah, and it applies all throughout the company as a company for everything that we're here to do together.
Yeah.
Not just in ice cream, but how we're impacting ice cream, how we're impacting service, how we're building our stores, all of the things that we do.
Yeah. You shared with me, so as we talk about culture and the messages, part of culture is the consistent messaging that we share with the people around us, right? Marketers refer to it as the rule of 7. So if you want to share a message with somebody, marketer will tell you, right? You have to tell somebody 7 times before they're going to take action. So if I want you to buy this wonderful cup of water, I tell you about it, and then I show up and I got to tell you about it again, and then I got to remind you about this water, and then I got to tell you it makes you, jump off mountains with skateboards or something. And it's wonderful. And then by the 7th time I tell you about it, you say, oh, what I could really go for is a water, right? And so it's this rinse and the repeat of what are the messages that are important to us, and those messages begin to get anchored in the community or the company of people around us. You shared a letter that you wrote following what happened in Charlottesville that you shared with your company, I think, right? You shared with everybody. And there was a statement in there that now I think exists in your stores, right? Why was that significant? And tell a little bit about what that message was. What is it that you were trying to communicate with all your employees, but then also by hanging that message in the store, what is it that you were trying to share?
And well, first of all, too, we're not like poster people either, not for our customers. I mean, we have posters in our stores, but they're mostly beautiful and definitely not in the back rooms or whatever. We're not like that either. But after Charlottesville, and you guys also, this is Zoe. Zoe is our HR director. We had lots of conversations. Everybody was saying something externally. Everybody was doing something, and we were trying to figure out because obviously we were broken after that. I mean, it was a horrible, obviously, thing, and we wanted to figure out as a company to help the world heal, and we were talking about what to do or whatever, and we realized that what we needed to do is just take care of our team and our people, because we have 1,000 people, 1,100 people out in the world who are scared just like we are, and who are a part of our family, who are a part of our community, our company. And if we can make them feel a sense of belonging and love, we've done something great. Because then, of course, and this is how we operate our company anyway, because when we feel that sense of belonging together and that trust that we have of it as a team, that flows over the counter to our customers. And so the letter came out of that, and we wrote somebody said, I said we were going to do just a little letterpressed small poster that says, make people feel loved today, because that's how you change the world. And somebody said, it's like you're going to have to help me on the sports reference because I don't remember what it is. But it's like the Play Like a Champion today, where we can literally high five it on the way out every day when we're in those stores. And it's in my office, and it's in all over our office or whatever.
So it says, make people feel loved today, which, I mean, how are you talk about
just make people feel loved. I mean,
yeah, you talk about this all. The word love also in business we don't usually use all that often.
We do, because that's where it all comes from. And in fact, all of creativity, which isn't art, by the way, it's solving problems,
right.
Comes from a place of love.
Yeah.
That's the only reason to solve problems, is because we love each other, right? And I agree. I don't know why we don't use it more. My mother, who grew up, who was kind of a hippie or whatever, she was like, oh my God, Jenny, are you seriously using the word love? That's so out of fashion. My mom said that. And I was like, are you kidding? Like somehow love had been rebranded or became out of style or something. How could that ever be? And she was like, it just makes, it's just, ooh. I'm like, really? I don't know, but I do. I think that's exactly where it all comes from.
No, and I love the fact that you use it. And I love the fact that you're saying that for our company, our community of people, that's what we're trying to help deliver.
Yeah, and let's just face it, too, that, it's part of making, I always say I built a company that you would build if you were 12, and you thought this is how everybody built companies. But we built the company that we want to work at every day. You know what I mean? And, you don't want to work somewhere
that sounds simple, but
you want to go somewhere where you feel...
I built a company that we just think people are going to want to work at.
Yeah. I mean, that we want to work at.
Right.
If you do what you think is right, other people, there are other people that will think that's right too. Maybe not everybody,
Right.
It's starting internal.
So one of the other things that I think is important, because it's just a part of your story, is the fact, and I think it's also an important message, that we're talking about leadership, we're talking about culture, and how that then, in my opinion, helps drive this wonderful performance. But the reality is it doesn't also always go the way we hoped it would. And there also are times of turbulence. And there are actual factors that happen in the world that are out of our control, or there are mistakes we make or somebody else makes, or that is just happens, and yet we are then faced with how are we going to respond to that. And for you all, I'll let you tell a little bit more about from your perspective this, but for you all, very publicly, was this scare of listeria.
The crisis of 2015.
The crisis of 2015, which, for those, I'm no listeria expert, but I also know that the listeria, and especially in anybody that's making natural foods, is something that just exists, and oh, by the way, is a challenge for everybody out there that's doing it. And so this idea, though, that certainly began to take on a very public and sometimes unforgiving message around the idea that there was tests that was and tell me if I get this right, a presumptive positive test of one of your ice creams, which means a presumptive positive. And then everything that happened, which I'll circle back to in a minute, but then everything that happened from that of the company and you and your leadership team saying, how are we going to respond to this danger? Share a little bit about just that experience of the turbulence.
I mean, first of all, it's a call you don't want to get as a company. You work really hard. You think, we thought our safety standards were like NASA quality, at the time, and we've learned a lot since. But it's the call you don't want to get as a company, right? I mean, and so we're all sitting around the table, looking at what the reality was, that there was a presumptive positive. That's really scary, and I don't have a ton of memories from that exact moment, but I know that I have this moment memory of John Lowe saying, I think we all know what we're doing. And it wasn't because anybody said, we're going to do this. We need to do this. We need to do this. It was because people around the table said things like, there are pregnant women eating our ice cream. We've always said ice cream shouldn't hurt people. That's why we buy vanilla beans directly from Lulu and not from the regular market where we don't know where they come from. We said those things, and then that was when John was like, I think we know what we're doing. And within like 15 hours, I think, we had drafted all the recall stuff and recalled every single drop of our ice cream out in the world. 265 tons of ice creams, which went into making energy for many houses, to an anaerobic digester, which made us feel good in the darkness. But at that moment, the clock starts ticking because we have no ice cream. And I always joke that it takes 7 months to make 6 months of inventory for us. Like, it's a massive process to make our ice cream. Just to source ingredients is a massive process. We had things grown for us, so it was our entire store. So how are we going to make ice cream to open our stores, to keep the jobs, the whatever it was, 700 people on our payroll? And so that was the summer for us of 2015.
Yeah, and so I've sat with you, I've sat with John Lowe, their CEO, your husband, having a beer with them, and recounting this, when this was happening and what happened. And the way that they describe that meeting around the senior leadership tables, so that they have this information, that a presumptive positive, that there might be something out there, but we can't.
It was going to be like 4 more days before we got the official word,
right?
Because they take a long time to do these tests. For the Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so it's not as if, hey, there it is. It's there might be. And yet the conversation that then went around their senior leadership team about what was from the very beginning, and nobody posed the question other than what do you think we ought to do, and everything that had been built from a cultural standpoint of what their values were, that all of a sudden a conversation began about, well, if there's even one pregnant person out there that would eat this, then that's too many. And this conversation happened, and in the midst of all of this conversation that happened, at the very end of it, where John Lowe then said, I think we all know what we're doing, which was, but without even saying it, was they're pulling all of their inventory off the shelves. What I find fascinating is in the midst of that senior leadership meeting, not one person asked the question of, what's the economic fallout of this? What if we pull all this inventory off? What does that mean for our company? What's that mean for me? What does that mean for us? And that's fascinating.
If we believed anything, we believed it was over, and that was it. You know what I mean? It was worth it.
Yeah, I want to open up to the group. So I want to make sure that we have time for questions from the group.
Wait, we're ending on that?
No.
Actually,
we're not ending on that. We're gonna keep going, but I want to make sure that we're also
sure. I'll kick off your
I think
question.
there's going to be some people that may have some questions about that in particular, but then also other things that I want to make sure that we circle to.
The day the news broke, and all of your stores were closed down, I walked past one of them in the short north, and there were love notes that people had already started leaving on the door, and there were flowers. So I say that for two reasons. One, because as Howard said before, as he was talking about, if you put the people first, like just the good things happen because they happen. Talk a little bit about how that response made you feel about the culture you had built and the company you had built, that people weren't angry. People were like, we'll come back as soon as you open up again. We love you, Jeni.
Yeah, I mean, we were so focused on for the first few weeks the work that we needed to do. And when we saw those letters coming in, the flowers at the door, the Post-it notes all over, the drawings kids were doing, all of that. And then the Facebook messages started coming in, and it was overwhelming. We started putting them on our wall. I mean, none of us were doing the jobs that we had been doing like the day before, right? We were now in other jobs, whether you're an accountant in our company or me or anybody. We were now doing totally different work than we came into the company to do. Whatever that was, answering phones, doing whatever. And so we would walk in every day and look at all these messages and we read every single one, and there were thousands. And that was like really, really amazing. And by the way, too, in that same month or few of that year where we had a crisis that we handled what I think is the right way, and it's a testament to the team, Bluebell was also unfortunately going through their thing, and they were not handling it the right way, and they hadn't been handling it the right way for 3 years. And that wasn't anything we were thinking about. We thought about that later, but we were in all of the articles now with them, and that was really tough because the news would come out, and the news was so much more violent than what was actually, happening. And we couldn't say anything because you're not allowed. We had no voice, no external voice at all. We had nothing. We could say nothing to the media. So our local media was getting it wrong. They were finding experts to support their things. They were trying to make it into a national story, and it was really tough. And yet we had these people who somehow, through all of that, were still trusted us and were still on our side. And that 100%, that got us through. Like somebody said, "You have my sword," and then all of the, I'm like, sci-fi fantasy, Frodo. You said that, okay? And then somebody else came in. You have my axe. And then those people then would go, and these are people from all over the country, not just in Columbus, would go and help people understand what was going on social media. So people who were
members started to get those same messages and print them out. Next thing you know, you had an entire wall of love notes that were coming from people that were saying, "Hey,
well," and
we're
also
with you.
Boxes of supplies. People were bringing us lunch. Woody Falk, who's in R&D at Chick-fil-A, who is an amazing human being, hadn't met him before.
Yeah.
He was like, "I know a little bit about this." Sent me a $100 personal check, which I then bought whiskey for the team with. And I met him in Atlanta. And by the way, I think Chick-fil-A is an incredible company. The people who work at Chick-fil-A are just amazing people. And that's not, again, what you hear on the outside sometimes. But I've spent some time with him, and he's just a great guy. And now he knows that I bought whiskey with his money, but whatever. But stuff like that was happening.
Write that down too. Culture, whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, people were sending everything. I mean, I got this really swanky hand cream from this small maker in LA, like from just a person who was like, "I just want you to know that I care about you." And like, she sent me this amazing hand cream. You know what I mean? Like, but things that you just don't, it's so out of the blue.
Other questions?
So my wife has been greatly impacted by Oprah Winfrey. So I've spent the last 20 years being impacted by Oprah Winfrey. And one of the things that we talk about a lot at home is the aha moments. I kind of phrase them as stumbling upon truths. One of the things that I learned really, really early on is that when I stopped trying to figure out how to motivate someone and I just found out what already motivated them, their personal motivations, their performance skyrocketed. So whenever I have the opportunity, I try to ask people like yourself, in the business end of your job, what truths have you stumbled upon that have changed your business performance?
Oh gosh, there's been, I feel like there's so many, because that's what we're kind of after. You know, you keep going forward until you just like, and then you find these things, these moments. But just off the top of my head, just going back to the idea of making better ice cream. I wanted to make the best ice cream. That was what I set out to do. And I realized that that's really, with the best ice cream in the history of mankind, like this idea. And I thought it would be a lot easier to do than it was. I just thought you could go up to a farm and ask for some raw milk and make ice cream out of it. That's not how it works at all. The dairy industry is really, really hard. And in a way that sort of, I don't know if it's an aha moment, but it's a truth that it's not about being able to do everything right now. It's about taking a step toward your, it's a vision. It's becoming who you want to be over time, because it's not something you can do right away, And so that at some point that came to me after doing and really trying and having a lot of not success with it, and realizing that like I can't think of that as failure, because it's not. We're moving toward that goal, and that's actually the best place we can be. That's exactly what we need to be doing, is moving toward something every day. It's the long game, yeah, and it can be hard, especially as the creator and founder. You want everything to be perfect all the time, and it's not, and never will be. And so accepting that's what it is. That's the game. That's the thing. That's the fun. That's what gets you out of bed in the morning. That's the ship you're on. You believe something's over the horizon, and you're going there. That's the thing. And that's also like what makes life really fun. It's the adventure. Mm-hmm.
Barb?
You got a lot of negative feedback from the press. For those of us who are local, like, I felt awful for you, right? We all did. So what did you learn about yourself through that time of how to deal with when other people around you are talking about you and you can't control the message? How did you guard who you were as the leader of the company and protect the core values that you had when you couldn't control the messages that were going on outside the company?
In a way, I didn't. I became a new person. I did. I learned so much from that time, and none of it's negative. It's all extraordinarily positive. I learned so much about team. We always talked about how we love to say, like, Jeni's is a team of talent, hustle, and guts. We said it all the time. And then we got a chance to prove it, right? We got this chance over this summer to do it. And we're like laughing at like what we used to think was hard now, you know what I mean? Because we've been through it now together. And truly, like, that moment is like, it's crisis when there's a before and after in your life. And for me, that's how it was. And it's really hard. You'd never wish it on your worst enemy. You would never wish anybody to have to go through true crisis when everything in your life, when you believe that like the bridge is broken to your future. At the same time, getting to rebuild only with the stuff that you want is great. Like, it's an amazing moment. And I became really, truly, I kept all the good stuff, I left all the bad stuff away, and added new things to my personality and who I am personally that will be with me forever. And I'm so grateful for this, like, beyond grateful. It's hard to explain how grateful I am for that. Like, I'll never be able to put those into words, ever. And people who've been through that, it's like, we know. We know. And it wasn't tragedy. Like, I was in crisis, but I wasn't in tragedy, and I knew exactly what that was, because I'd been reading a lot about Syrians and refugees and all of that, and I was never without hope. And that's something that meant something a lot to me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's your company's motivation behind becoming a certified B corporation? What does that mean to you?
Well, certified B corporation, we're certified by an independent party. We just believe that business can be a powerful change for good in the world. And we didn't do much different to become certified. It was just like, hey, there's this thing that exists. Let's see if we qualify. And we did, and that was great. And I think that what it does for us is, if anything, it helps us say, everybody wants to make it look like they're doing really good stuff because it's easy to do. Like, if Jeni's does something, then our competitor, they make it look like it by putting it in a package that looks the same, and it's like Me Too marketing, right? So for us, it's like we can put our money where our mouth is. Like, we can say, we'll prove it. Or we're not going to say anything to them like that, but we prove it. We prove it every day. Living wage and working with women-owned businesses and fair trade and direct trade and all of that stuff and sustainability things and whatever. And it's a whole program that we have as a company. And in the end, though, I will just say too that it's not about being a B Corp for us at all. For us, it's about the company that we are, and it goes back to culture. These are the decisions that we've made because we thought that they were the right decisions to make. And the B Corp is kind of fun because we get to say, we'll prove it. But in the end, we would do it with or without that, Oh, I'm calling them. You?
Thanks, Heather. I had the pleasure of listening to you at the Women in Digital conference as well. It was awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Very well done. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you measure and keep a pulse on culture and some of the things that set you apart, your company apart?
What I do is I just spend a lot of time in our stores. That's my favorite place in the company. Stores and other areas in the company, but our stores are my favorite place. And I feel like the best place to figure out what we're doing, if it's working or whatever. I think that I was talking to somebody at lunch today too, but there's an art to what we do, and it's this intention behind everything. And how you can look at a photograph and it's a perfect photograph in every way. Lighting is perfect, the thing is styled right, everything's perfect. And you look at another photograph that's also styled right and everything's perfect and whatever, but that one feels good, and I don't know why. You can't figure it out. But there's an intention behind it. You can feel it. And I know that in our art and design team, I'm that's a perfect photo, but it means nothing to me. You can feel intention that way in companies too. And I don't really, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you can feel it. And it's all the little tiny details together. And it just feels, if it feels good, then I feel like we're doing a good job. And yet I can stand there and point out different things that we can make better, of course. But if it doesn't feel good, and it's just something that you just have to, it's just a feeling, but you have to spend a lot of time there to know that. And so for me, I feel like that's where I get that. And it's in Columbus, but it's all over, anywhere. Mm-hmm.
Floria.
Hello. It's good to meet you. I heard, I got to read a story with your voice in it during not long after 2015 that really connected me to what I loved, and I've always loved the ice cream. But when I got to meet you through just a very clear lens of, it was a story, I think, online someplace, and I've just been connected with you since then because I heard your voice and the resilience, and so it came through. So I am so glad you got back from people what you reaped, what you had sown. You reaped it when the crisis came. And no media, no voice out there can actually conquer love, because that's what it was about. And so I'm so happy that love took over, and that you are here, and that you are still doing what you're doing. But my question for you is this. You had the opportunity for do-overs. What was that one thing that you had an opportunity to do over in the rebuild that was really, it still resonates for you today? Because there was a blessing in the crisis. What came out of it, what was ashes became beauty. So what was that one thing?
I don't know if it was one thing, but it was just, it's just an extreme focus, which I retain. I still have an extreme focus. Like I always say, I don't give a shit about shit I don't give a shit about. That's how I feel now, which really means I give a big shit about shit I care about, right? I mean, that's what it is. I care only about the things that I care about, and I focus only on those things, and that's it. And that's weird. Like I don't know, because everything seems important, but not to me anymore. You know what I mean? And that's everything. That's like petty things and just like all the way up, I think it's that focus. And as a team, we've got that too, as a company. Yeah. Everything that we do we know why we do it for a reason. And our vision for the future is that too, right? We know exactly why we're doing things. And it's just to be a great company and to make, set the standard for American ice creams.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Becky?
I just am curious what is keeping you up at night right now, whether it's ice cream or culture. Entrepreneurs always have the thing that's making them think what's next. So what is that for you?
Well, it's always the same. It's always been, the flavor is the fun thing. I always joke that the flavor gets me out of bed in the morning. Make new flavors, and it's sort of just like there's the fun part of our business, and it's making things, whatever that is. For me, the thing that I stay up at night thinking about that I love is like, which is not the interesting stuff because it's always the most boring, but it's like the body and texture of the ice cream. So what we're going to do truly, that's innovation in ice cream is not flavor. Innovation in ice cream is in body and texture, because every ice cream, we're making ice cream very differently than other ice cream makers do. We don't use a mix that you can buy from a dairy and then flavor it, which is how everybody else does it. We actually want to work with milk proteins to build body and texture, and I know we can do it, and we are doing it, and we can even get better at it. And that's just going to take that's just taking a lot of fun thinking. Those kinds of things are like fun challenges that keep me up and that I love, and it's like my vision for what ice cream can become. Because, did you guys see Wonder Woman? Sorry.
Please.
But the part where she grabs the ice cream from the guy and she eats it, and it's like 3 seconds in the movie, but she's like, oh my gosh, she should be so proud. Yeah. And it's like, and I was like, that is like exactly how I feel about ice cream. Because like, I feel like ice cream just feels so good. It's so beautiful when it's right. And when you add stabilizers and emulsifiers and gums, there's nothing wrong with them, but they give it a different texture, and they give it a slightly different flavor that I don't love, and it's not perfect. And I know we can do this perfect. And it's that moment that I just think feels so good that you want to share it with somebody else. And there's just something about that. So that's the thing that I just like, the texture in the body, and then also that supports flavor. But it's that moment, that like feeling.
So do you have any guilt of how I look because of ice cream? Remember when I was on the board of the Gap and we'd sell all these pants, right? Yeah, exactly. And I'd watch these young women that shouldn't be wearing them walk down the street. I'm sorry, God.
It's so funny. Well, and I don't know. I always say one voluptuous bite is worth all the forgettable ice cream in the world. Like, I just love that one. It doesn't... You notice, too, like, in our stores, we don't jump on trends, like Instagram trends. Like, there's, like, everything is huge, and it's, like, I don't know, a milkshake with an entire cake and a pie on top of it and whatever. Like, that's a very popular thing to do right now. You will never see that in our stores, ever. And I don't care if we go out of business because of it. Like, a scoop of ice cream on a cone. We don't even do like really double scoops like the old-fashioned kind. Like, we respect the ice cream and that and it's like, I don't know. So I feel like, for 350 calories, it's not that bad, right? Yeah.
Keep doing it, Howard. That's what she's saying.
I would
Just
rather
keep
have,
going.
yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
How often do you eat ice cream?
Every day. At least once.
What a job! Yeah, unbelievable.
I'm the only person that eats ice cream with a straight face. Like, I'm like looking for like the defects.
See, Mark is still hanging on the Wonder Woman comment.
Yeah.
He wrote a book about ordinary superpowers, and so a great book. He's now picturing Wonder Woman. That's something totally different. Her ordinary superpower is ice cream.
Yeah.
And that's what you're sharing with the world. I'm wondering
because ice cream is a great way to do that. It brings people together. It brings your guards down. It pulls you into the moment. You can't not be in the moment when you're eating ice cream. I mean, it like the moment disappears in front of you. You have to attack it.
That's right. It's exactly when my father pointed to the house he built. It's that same feeling, It's like, that's perfection.
Yeah.
But we're going to do it better next time.
Yeah. Brooksy.
Just in thinking innovation, creativity, are there things you do proactively, whether it's your leadership team or team in general, to foster and spark that creativity and try to foster some new innovation or creative things to be thinking about? Are you proactive and mindful of that as a company? And what are those things?
I mean, I'd like to say that we are. I think that the way that we do our company is that way, but I don't have any reference to. What would you say, Zoe?
Well, I'll say that when she started this company, she said, when you've been there for 3 years, you should get paid for a month off. You should get paid for a month off and take a sabbatical strictly so that you can refresh your soul and get inspired and then come back and weave that in. And we still do that for every single employee at any level, part-time, full-time. After 3 years, you get a month paid, and you aren't allowed to get on your email. And she guards that.
We do expect people to come back. I mean, hopefully they want to. Well, that too. But to come back and share with us what they did. I mean, I guess we don't expect that, but I love that when people come back and they're so refreshed and excited that they share it.
So that's...
Which is an example of anchoring that value.
It's an example of anchoring that value.
Yeah.
And that's one example. There are many ways that we start meetings or that we convene together, or the way there's a rare Friday afternoon that we don't find some time to just go kind of hang out with each other or have a video call with somebody instead of a phone call that works out of Arizona so that we can see their face and talk to them. And you're kind of a crusader for that kind of thing.
Even just how we get around the table and talk about what we're doing. I mean, it's one thing to say that you're open to everybody's ideas and everybody bringing their whole self to the table, but you have to actually work at that and demand that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And create an environment that's safe for that kind of where we expect not people to bring their ideas to the table so that we have the best to choose from or whatever, but like. That, too, I think, gets people thinking before they go to the meeting, that it's not just here for the meeting to get through your list, but that you're actually here to make the company better. Like, we're doing something here.
Yeah. I'm wondering, is there any question you have of the group, or or a question that you think people like us that are coming to this and sitting here that we ought to be asking ourselves, that we ought to be thinking about for the culture, how, once again, whatever you're thinking about that culture is for you. What question do you think we ought to be thinking about?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think that that understanding the emotion in what we do. I mean, are you, just that words are one thing, but words are always trying to describe emotions, which is why we keep coming out with new ones. But are you in tune with what you're sort of feeling and thinking and going forward with every day? I'm always really curious about where other people work because like I said, I wasn't trained by another company, and so I'm always curious to go into other people where they're working or whatever. I mean, I'd love to hear any of your success stories.
So let's ask that, because looking around the room, and there's everybody in this room. If you got something to share something. But I'm interested, knowing what Zoe, you guys are doing at Jeni's, Kenny, Columbus 2020 stuff, Craig, Team Fishel, Elford. Looking around the room, knowing Scott, knowing what you guys are doing at CRSI, knowing what we're doing at Syracuse. There are people in this room, Ernst & Young. What is it that you, from your perspective, what are exciting things that are happening that you see in terms of building culture? Yeah.
It's not actually my culture, but I do think it's amazing, and something that I will learn from, which is...
And who are you?
Oh, I'm David Knuth, and I actually live across the GD Street from your new Venice location in Los Angeles. And actually, that's what I was going to talk about, was at lunch, Ben Smith was telling me that I think within the last month, I think that you could fool yourself into thinking that you just have the best ice cream or Starbucks just has the best coffee. You could take that angle. But Ben was telling me that in the last week, I think, he was in a Starbucks someplace close to Columbus, and he mentioned that he was going to get to sit down with Howard, and the barista lost her mind I mean, think about that. How many stores there are. That's unbelievable. And Jace, you know where I live. You know where that Jeni's shop is. And I've spent a little bit of time on those couple blocks in the bars, restaurants. I'm known. I'm kind of a big deal. I went door to door and shook hands at one point. I have never gotten a reaction in my life like I got when I told the woman, your equivalent of a barista, that you went to my high school. We've never met. I didn't even pretend like, oh, we're best friends. They all lost their minds. There was an extra free scoop. Sorry, you lost a little margin, but it really is amazing. It's such a good reminder that in addition to the best ice cream and coffee and all that, there is a tangible result and a look on people's faces when they feel that value by both of you. That is just a wonderful thing to be reminded of.
Thank you. That's awesome. I remember when I one time I went into that store, and the woman behind the counter, I think her name was Veronica, she was like, okay, it's nice to meet you. The first thing I need to tell you is that your hot chocolate is not very good, and I figured out how to make a better one. And it was so good.
All suggestions are welcome.
Yeah. It was so good, yeah. No, and hers was better. It was great. No, but I love that. And I love that when I walked in the store, the first time I met her, she felt open and free enough in our company to immediately get me behind the counter and show me how to make hot chocolate better. Like, without even, I thought that was just wonderful. So, yeah, I agree 100%.
Talent, hustle, and guts.
Talent, hustle, and guts. But, you build the company, the culture that you want, and it starts and ends, that's it.
Starts multiplying.
If you try and work hard at it, it's there. And it's life-changing.
They're so inspired by you that maybe the third or fourth time I was going to go there, I didn't really feel like turning myself on and like going in and having the whole conversation that, he went to high school with it. I actually Postmated your ice cream across the street because I couldn't put it all on and be on. That's how much they love you.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny. I'll tell them to cut back a little. So.
What other observations do you have from what you're seeing at your companies? What's working? Craig, yeah. And say who you are, who you work for.
Craig Mathis. I work for Team Fishel. I have the pleasure of actually running our leadership development program at Team Fishel that is named after Jason's grandfather, or uncle, the Jeff Keeler Leadership Academy. And we've been doing it for 10 years, and we put 12 of our high potential leaders every 12 months through a pretty intense leadership program. And we've been around a long time at Team Fishel. We're far from perfect. In fact, it's exciting to sort of listen to Jeni talk about sort of rebuilding. It would be really exciting at an organization that's been around for 80 years to have an opportunity to rebuild a little bit without having to go through a crisis. But I think, training our future leaders is a way of doing that. Yep. We've got a long, tenured group of executive leaders that are great, but we need more innovation, more creativity. And I think the fact that we're investing in future leaders, I think we're seeing some very positive results from that.
What is honored will be cultivated. What else? Who else? What else is working out there from your perspective?
Hi, Melissa. I have 3 coworkers here, so they can help keep me honest if I'm saying something out of turn. But we work for OhioHealth, so for those of you not local, that's a system of 10 hospitals in Ohio and then some outpatient in other areas. And we have a really strong culture in that we do have 4 values that are very well known. They're not just words on a wall because our leadership abides by them. But one area we've been trying to lean into is innovation, because healthcare is very much changing. And if we don't change along with it, we won't be successful in the future. And with innovation comes the need to have risk-taking. And we have identified that that's something that we struggle with, because one of our values is excellence. And there's always that strive for excellence, that you don't take risks, you don't set yourself up for failure. And in fact, we recently did a survey to talk about risk taking as part of our engagement survey, and found that a significant portion of our, especially senior leaders, are risk averse, are afraid of taking risk. And so we've had a lot of conversation about that. And twice a year we get all of our leaders together in a room for several hours, about 1,500 people. And this last time our leaders took a risk, our senior leaders, and acknowledged a situation in which we kind of disrupted a business. We had a business model and a group of people, and they were working perfectly, and we were serving the needs of the public, and just really realized that that was not the way we needed to go, and we didn't handle it well. We told people last minute. We readjusted people's jobs. People didn't know if they'd have a job for 3 months or so. The intention was, let's not meet in a back room and let rumor happen. So we jumped the gun and communicated details before we had details. And it didn't feel good. And so several weeks ago when we had that meeting, our leadership team acknowledged that on stage, had a kind of a live theater interaction to show both sides, and said, we messed up. And our CEO even said, in hindsight, he realized it didn't feel good, but he didn't speak up and nobody else did. And so it's a move towards authenticity that I think we haven't seen in our organization led by leadership. And I think it gave people that hope that they can be authentic and take risks. But I think it also gave people a sense of empowerment that if you look around and something doesn't feel right, even if it's a leader above you who's making that decision or saying this is what we should do, that you should have the boldness to speak up and say this doesn't feel right.
Love it. Yeah, Mark.
So my company's only 6 people. Very small company, but we've been around for a while.
What company is that, Mark?
It's called Spark Space. It's a retreat center, business retreat center here in Columbus. And we had something similar happen like that this week. So it happens in large and small, where I wanted to put out an announcement to the world about some of the changes that have been going on in our company that I thought were really good. And so I drafted up this announcement, and before blasting it out, I had that moment like, maybe I should just check with my team. And so I sent it to my team first. I said, here's how I want to go about this. And I had already sort of verbally mentioned the idea of what this was going to be, and nobody said anything. They were all like, okay, that's fine, whatever. It's your company. You can do whatever you want. And about an hour later, I got an email back, and because I had sent this to them, I was working from a coffee shop or something. And I got an email back, and it said, we got together and talked about this. And I'm like, it's a coup. You know, like this. When you hear that, like they banded together, and then now they're coming after you with pitchforks or something. And they said, we understand where you were coming from, but it just doesn't feel right. And, you know, I was kind of floored on one hand because my intentions were good, but my execution was wrong. But to me, that building that culture is, as a leader, I got to be willing to take those blinders off. But the only way to do it is to have some authenticity and some truth and some, you know, that openness. And I'm so grateful I have those people that are willing to say, you know, even if they had to band together to do it, to come at me and say, look, this just didn't feel right to us. This didn't feel like us. That's kind of how they phrase it. This didn't feel like us. And they included me in that, which was good. So they haven't kicked me out yet, which is good. But it's just that sort of that openness and willingness and part of that courage I mentioned this morning of being able to sort of step out there and then ask that question of, so what do you think?
Yeah.
You know, it's not just me as the leader. It's us as a company that are trying to do this.
And yet you've created that environment where they felt like they could come to you and could say that, and were willing to have that conversation that was the currency for change. To say, don't hit that send button quite yet.
It's really important that you and your team all can bring ideas out. I mean, I do that all the time. Like, I feel like I'm putting things out into our company all the time, and what? And sometimes they're just stupid ideas, or I mean, like full on stupid ideas, and like, but having a team and a company where I feel safe to do that, and other people do too, is key. And then also safe to say, that's a really dumb idea. You know? Like, great. And I'm not going to take that personally at all either. It's like, cool, you know, that's great. Let's figure it out another way or whatever it is.
Yeah, and part of the thing about conversation is because my mind is always going, just like you, I'm always going about things. But with all the people that work with me, I can never assume that they can read my mind. I can never assume that. So that means a conversation is mandatory. It's mandatory, which is that.
Yeah.
And I would piggyback that a critical skill that a leader needs to have is the ability to truly listen. To listen.
I didn't even catch it.
Guy's good. He's a pro.
But I think that goes at every level, right? In everything that we're doing, because if you feel like you've been heard, you're going to be much more willing to take risks or do the things you haven't tried. And you only feel like you're heard if you're listened to. And I don't think we give enough time in our days to be present enough to truly listen to what's happening. You know, as a role of a consultant, I go in and my first question is, okay, who can I meet with and what discussions can I have? Because I have to listen to what's going on at every level of the company in order to be able to successfully do anything. Right. And so many owners are like, oh, I didn't even think to ask that question. And it's like, well, what kind of culture are you creating when you're not taking that time to listen? So I think that's critical.
Absolutely.
And the maturity to be able to handle criticism or, you know, and take it in stride and not take it personally, not get upset. That's listening.
That's it. The number one thing you can maybe foster in your organization is just that. And it takes like just being an example for that too. But like not taking things personally is like every 12-year-old should learn that. It should be, and every for the 5-year-old for the rest of your life, right? That's just that's the thing. And we learn that in art fairly quickly. But that's such an important thing. If we can get everybody doing that, then man, you can get really productive.
So if you get bad ice cream, do you take it personally?
If I get it or if I serve it from my company,
doesn't happen.
I don't know that I would take that personally. I mean, I would definitely solve that.
Solve it.
Yeah.
You don't feel a personal.
What I don't feel is anger toward another person. I definitely take so I separate those. So I take every experience you have in our stores personally. I put I have a whole thing. I mean, put your name on it. You know, I put my name on it, and it means something to me. It's the only thing I actually own. It's very, very important to me. But in terms of me getting emotional about it to the point where I can't solve the problem because now I have to solve my own emotional problems first, or somebody else has to solve them with me or for me, that's the part where I feel like, we don't get anywhere with that. So we're going to solve this problem real quick, but that means we're not going to be that emotional about it. But so taking it personally, but not being emotional.
I have a saying that I like. It's a 2-word best quote I've ever read. It's compassionate emptiness. Right? Being compassionate about what's going on, compassionate about a problem, but empty of solutions, empty of judgment. And it took me a long time to learn that. My kids taught me that one. Dad, I don't want your solutions. I just want you to listen to me.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
My name's Jeff Williams. Just until a few months ago, I've been at Aldi Grocery for over the last decade. One of the reasons why I made a move into a private company was cultural reasons. Not anything negative, but just wanting to be in charge of culture in a different way. But to your question as to what's working these days, a lot of I've been reading on lately is the new currency being the currency of attention. In today's society, I have other people. I have tech that does scheduling for me, books appointments for me, has, questionnaires, takes meetings and things along those lines. And the battle in this day and age to get someone's attention, of how the people that can figure that out, it's almost like taking a step back and being old school. I need to figure out how to sit down in front of somebody. But it's not just the pay attention to me, it's the people who can capture attention.
Yeah.
My employees, how do I give them my attention? And what I've found kind of what holds that together, what keeps the attention, is when people can find common ground. So I do a lot of negotiating, and when I have somebody's attention, I try my best not to talk about business until I've found some sort of common ground, just to tie us together as people first before business. So just that battle for one-on-one personal attention over the next decade is going to be pretty interesting to follow.
It's awesome. Jeni, I believe that your company is a thermostat culture because I believe, and again, it's not about being perfect, but it is about having clarity around what is the temperature that we're trying to set, and so that even when things happen, you then are able to say, okay, well, proactively, how are we going to respond? And we have clarity around, well, this is the temperature that we've always tried to set, and we're going to try to set it again. I think you are another great example of the people we've been talking about that does that. Like, you are you, and you are setting that temperature for the people around you. And so I'm so grateful and thankful that you've been a part of today and to share your story a little bit. You're going to stick around so people can ask her more questions. But thank you for sharing not only the great stuff, but also the stuff that maybe isn't perfect with us. And I love that our dogs love to play together.
I know. My
So
dog,
that's
Joe Biden.
her dog's name is Joe Biden, by the way.
If I open the door, he runs out and runs right down to Phoebe's.
Yeah.
Like, that's where he goes.
That's
I have
right.
to keep him. I know, it's really fun.
Your dog doesn't have that little electrocution.
They come down and they set into Phoebe's yard, so Phoebe can play.
Yeah,
it's
I'll
cool.
always be able to get him down there. It's fine. He doesn't leave Phoebe's yard, but he just leaves mine. He knows just how to get down there. Well, thank you.
Where's the ice cream? I brought the coffee.
Would you all clap for Jeni?
Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast platform or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of this conversation. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or this kind of development would add value to your team or organization, we hope you'll contact us at www.jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.